Here's the rectangular version of the face mask. So what I do is I'm going to sew 1/4 inch seam. I start about 1/3 of the way down because you're going to leave a space to turn, okay? So, I'm going to sew a couple of stitches, then I'm going to stop. I'm going to get my elastic. I'm going to pull up the corner here, and I'm going to do this on a 45, all right? And I'm going to hold this down. I'm going to stitch around the corner, turn the corner, stitch a little bit down so that I can work with this edge. I'm going to pull the elastic around. The cool thing about this flat elastic is you can feel if it's got a twist in it or not. This is nice and flat. I'm going to go down, so this corner, I'm going to turn, I'm going to go down the long side, and sometimes you go a little too far to where you can't work with the elastic, you'll know, and you can back up and fix it. Anyway, again, you're going to put this on the 45, hold it down, sew it around. It kind of doesn't matter if it totally catches because you're also going to do a top stitch around it. So enough to get this off the edge here. Pull your elastic around to your 4th corner. Now I'm only going to go a little ways so that I have enough room to turn, okay? And usually I do a lock stitch there. And then when you turn the fabric, let's see, takes a while here. The nice thing is you have the elastic to pull the corners out. If you've ever had to turn something inside out, it's usually difficult. You have to put scissors in the corner or something like that. This way you can just pull your elastic out. You've got your rectangle. You can tuck in this and then you're ready to go and iron it. But I'm going to show you how to do the other variation that we're doing for the hospital. So that's this pattern here. And I have, as I mentioned, I got the twill tape to use or the bias tape. So I'm going to, on this one, I'm going to start at one end. Again, I'm going to do 1/4 inch. If you want to get fancy, you can turn the corner and make this a nice point. I have my 16-inch piece of twill or bias tape or whatever, and I'm going to just make sure that I have this end in here, right under the seam line and right on the edge. I'm going to go down to the bottom. And actually I went a little bit too far, so I'm going to go back here so I have enough room. You're going to put this second piece in here, right up against the edge. And after a while, you just kind of judge how far it needs to be so that you have a seam allowance. So I'm going to put this in here. Turn the corner, pull this in out of the way. I sew that all the way. I actually take it off the machine. I'm going to push everything in there. I'm going to pull this one piece out right on the edge like this. And I'm going to sew just part way. All that good. And then the last piece I put in, I'm going to push everything in here Get your last piece of bias tape or twill tape in here. Same thing as I just did on the other side. I'm just going to give it a little stitch, maybe a couple of inches. Like this, and then I can turn it. And the cool thing is, because you have the tape in here, you can use it to pull everything right side out. And because this has a little bit of a point to it, you've got to kind of get your shape. And then you're ready to go to the ironing board. Okay, so for the ironing, I just kind of iron the twill tape or the bias tape, whatever I've got. I've already pushed out the points here on this particular pattern, and I just kind of tuck those in like that, give it a quick iron, iron the tape, might turn it over and give it another iron on the other side. Now for the pleats, I just eyeball them, okay? It really doesn't matter. The idea is just to get this small so that it fits around the face. So I'm just going to do about 1/4 inch. Give it a quick press. I'll do a second one. And a third one. And again, it doesn't matter. Just try and keep it even, so that then I can go to the machine. Now with the rectangular one, same deal. Make sure that these corners are pulled out. Tuck in the edges here. And after you do about 100 or so, it gets faster. Same thing, just ends up being about a quarter of an inch pleat. Here, and one more. Like this. And then we're ready to go back to the machine. Okay, so for the rectangular one, you just, since you have your pleats done, I just finger press them like this. I'm going to do 1/8 of an inch seam around that's going to do a top stitch, and it's going to hold down the pleats. If your machine gets hung up, you can actually, you could do a top stitch and then you could do your pleats, or you could do one direction and then you can stop and then you can go over and do the other side. But I do it all around, and you'll see I have this handy tool. It's called a stiletto. You could use scissors, something sharp like this to push your fabric in anyway. So I'm going to start here. Since you don't want to pet the cat backwards, I start with the pleats facing down so that this presser foot doesn't get hung up. So I'm just going to go around here. Sometimes it gets hung up and I have to push the fabric through. I'm going to turn, go down the long side. I'm going to turn it. This is a little more difficult because the presser foot is working against the pleats. So I'll push it down as needed. And if you don't have something like this, you can pull it on this side if you have to pull it through. Sometimes the feed dogs get messed up with the pleats and it gets the fabric gets hung up. So I'm just going to push this through like this. Sew down the long side. And if you're really good, like loping a horse up to a side pass pole, you can turn and you're just right on where you started. I give a couple stitches like that, and then I'm done. Now the other one, same thing. You just have a little bit of a corner corner to do, or actually this you can see it's just kind of a curve. So I'm just going to do, oops, I'm going to start this way. 1/8 of an inch approximately. Turn the corner. And what this does is it seals up the open end. So I'm going to come up to the corner, turn. See, it wants to get hung up a little bit, so sometimes I stop, push that in there. And again, it gets hung up sometimes, so actually it's really getting hung up. Oh, and I just broke a needle, so anyway.
Go.
Okay, technical failure. Anyway, put a new needle in there. Oh, busted a second needle. All right, so third time is a charm. I'm going to push this through carefully so I don't break a third needle. Turn the corner. Now the difference with this one for the hospitals is we put the pleats in, and I just, after hundreds of these now, I've just kind of eyeball it. So I might go about 3/4 of an inch in and maybe an inch long, and just sew a little bit of a dart here. Usually I just turn it, go back the other direction. Call that good. On the other corner, I just make sure I have the ends lined up. I'm going to do just more of a triangle on this side. And I go back over it. Stop. I'm going to trim maybe 1/8 of an inch, 1/16 of an inch. Clip my little threads. Like this, and turn it, and I have my finished mask.